What up, everybody, and welcome to Baz on Blades. My name is Baz, and I talk about blades. Today, we're going to do a Guts and Glory disassembly video on the new Kershaw Natrix copper. This is a miniature Natrix in the copper scales and D2 tool steel for blade steel that everybody has been waiting all of 2018 on. I think most of us in the enthusiast community have had this knife pre-ordered since about March or April, and it is now November and they finally started shipping out. I got mine in, and it's a cool little knife, but it does have one major issue that people are reporting. I have seen in my example. We're going to open this thing up. We're going to take a look at the inside. We're going to address this issue that I'm sure many of you have already seen or will be seeing, and whether you can correct the issue yourself or not, and whether Kershaw is going to have to do some product improvement and redesign on this to correct the issue. So the first thing we're going to do, let's move some of this out of here. It's a very simple knife. You've got two different Torx screws in it. For the pivot, you've got a T8. And I really do like the pivot hardware on this knife. It's very nice. It's cut out to where you can see through it. Let's see here. You can see through it and you can see the copper behind it. I really like that. And then we're going to go to a T6. And we're going to remove this deep carry pocket clip, which I really like. I like this deep carry pocket clip. It's compact and it's totally deep carry. It actually carries deeper than the body of the knife. You see these two screws here from the outside. They are what holds the subframe lock in. We'll remove these two body screws here, also T6. And then we will take this little booger apart and take a look at the inside. Now, I have disassembled this knife actually more than a couple of times, and we will get into that. I initially did a disassembly just from curiosity. I wanted to take a look at the inside, and my pivot had a little gritty spot in it. In the bearings, because these are no longer assisted opening. They are now manual and they are running on KVT bearings. So I did a disassembly, and actually I've worked on it a few times, guys, and we will go into that. Let's take a look here. All right, now we do have pockets that are machined into this copper for weight relief. And let's see here. Let's brush some smuts out of this. And there goes the stop pin. We'll brush this smuts out from my pocket from carry of this thing, because Baz on Blades has got to carry a knife to get to know it, to do reviews and whatnot. And really, I've been waiting all year on this knife. I'm not a huge copper fanboy, but I do like copper as a material, if for no other reason than it's just not commonly used. So, very basic knife. Let's go over the internals very quickly. You do have some pocket milling on the show side scale here, extensive pocket milling. It does lighten it up quite a bit. On the lock side scale, you also do have some pocket milling in the available space for that. You've got a milled area here where, again, those two screws are holding in the subframe lock, which is a steel lock bar in this copper body. And you do have, let's use their little pointer here, you do have a stainless washer insert here in the milled pockets for the bearings, and that is on both sides. So no worries about those bearings riding against the much softer copper. And I've got oil on this. I may not be able to get it out because it's going to be stuck in that oil. Now, one thing that I was a little disappointed in was how very thin they are. Very thin, these washers. And I have seen reports of people that have gotten them, and the washers themselves have been dimpled by the bearings because the pivot was over tightened from the factory. So if you feel any what feels like grittiness or unevenness, or just anything you're not used to feeling out of smooth bearings, that might be an issue, or you may just have some dirt in there. Mine was a little dirty. All right, so one thing that I was surprised with is the through hole for the pivot on the blade is widely chamfered, guys. That is a very wide, aggressive chamfer on that. I don't know that it makes any difference at all. It's just not common to see that wide of a chamfer. As far as the bearings go, these little KVT bearings that are in phosphor bronze cages here, they're very, very free rolling stainless bearings. I have no issues there, guys. And the knife was fairly clean from the factory. I did have one little piece of grit in mine, but beyond that, it was pretty doggone clean. Now, in disassembly on this, we're just going to drop a bearing right down in there, and I did the open side of the race towards the pocket, and we will put our blade in here, and I'm going to do, well, let's get a drop of oil on this. I'm just going to put one drop of oil on there. And we're going to put our blade in here. And guys, I got to tell you, this is a lot less awkward when you are not trying to do it around a camera mount. All right. Now we're up against the tension on that lock bar there. So, disassembly, very easy, guys. We'll again put one drop of oil on that side. And get the blade back on the pivot and the bearings back on there, and then we'll go back with our other side scale here, our show side scale. Get that started there, and we forgot to put the stop pin in. Well, Bass on Blades, you gotta have a stop pin for this thing to work. Wow, this is just incredibly, incredibly awkward, guys. There we go. All right. So, we're located by our stop pin. We are located by our body screws. And we are located by our pivot. So let's start putting some hardware back in this thing. And then we're going to talk about what the major issue is with this knife. And it is, in my opinion, it's a major issue that Kershaw will not have any choice but to do something about. And we're not talking about a little nitpiggly sort of issue. This is a major, major issue, guys, especially for left-handed users. Now, when I said earlier that I took this knife apart previously multiple times, there was a reason for that. When I reassembled the knife, there was a huge issue. When I reassembled the knife, it had absolutely no detent at all. And this little knife has got a nice, crisp detent. At least my example does. It was really, really nice, guys. No issues at all. And I got that pivot back in there. All right. Let's go ahead and get the centering set on this. You don't have to crank the pivot down real tight on this to get it centered. Now, we've got this reassembled here, and we'll go through really quick. I want to snug everything down so when I show you this issue, it is obvious that it is an issue and not just that things aren't snug down. And it looks like I'm going to have to get another tool out here for one of those screws to hold it. We will get another tool out here, guys, see if we can't find T6 bit for it. Is that it? Let's see here. No, that's not it. Alright, bear with me, guys. I should have had this out already because I knew that was two-sided hardware, but I didn't have it out. My apologies. All right. So we're going to need to hold it. Tighten that body screw down. And we will come back to this back body screw and we'll make sure that it's nice and tight. I apologize if I get out of frame, guys. Like I say, this is extremely awkward having to work on this reaching around a camera mount. Alright, and last we will check the mount screws for the subframe lock. Alright, so everything is snug down. This is what I ended up with. The knife is centered and fantastic action. Lockup is good. So I'm going to close that down and, well, what happened to the detent? It's totally gone. There is no detent at all. And for any of you that do know, the way a detent works is on the inside of this lock bar, there's a detent ball. And on this lock bar side of the blade, there's a hole drilled in it. There's actually, I'm not going to get into the exact geometry of how to set up a detent, but there is a science on how to set up a detent. And it is a very precise measurement as far as the location of the detent ball to detent hole. Now, when I put this back together, when I was working on it, and the detent was just totally gone, and I'm having to, I mean, yeah, there's absolutely just no detent there at all, guys. I can still get it to open, but I'm having to, you know, it's not the detent doing it, it's just me flinging it out with the flipper. When I first put this back together and I had no detent, I was like, oh crap. I put the bearings in there backwards. They've got two different offsets of either the bearings or the washers, and I got the lock geometry out. So I disassembled it 2 or 3 times. Changing that stuff around made absolutely no difference. And then one time after I reassembled it, I came and I pressed down on the lock bar and it fell right into the detent. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I got it then. And yeah, there it was. So then I opened it and then I've got no detent again. So then I'm thinking, okay, something is out in the geometry and there's really only a couple of things that would affect it. The next thing I started looking at was the stop pin, because the stop pin it physically is a stop pin for the open and close position. And I thought, okay, well that should be perfectly round, able to go back there in any position, but obviously something is wrong. So I started messing around with it, and I'd be able to push the lock bar down into the detent, and it would be great. And I would open it once and close it, and then it would have no detent again. And I was just racking my brain trying to figure out what it was, and basically what I was doing was overthinking it. And let's see if we can get close enough to do this and watch the position of the lock bar. Front to back is what I want you to look at when I press that in, guys. Okay, you see how when I pressed it in, it came out to the detent hole. As soon as I saw that, I knew exactly what it was. If you remember when we looked at the inside, you go to the base of the lock bar and there is a flat piece here that sits in a milled pocket on the inside of the knife. And these 2 screws go through and they're what holds it in. But apparently that part extends all the way to these 2 screw holes for the pocket clip. The pocket clip is actually being used, or the pocket clip screws are being used as a locating pin for the lock bar insert. Well, I don't know if Kershaw did that on purpose, because if you disassemble this knife and you leave the pocket clip off, it's then useless. You've got no detent. If you remove the pocket clip and put it on for left-hand carry, then it becomes useless. You've got no detent. And that's a pretty big issue, because there's a lot of left-handed knife enthusiasts out there that are going to take that pocket clip off and relocate it to the other side for carry, and then their knife is not going to be usable because it's not going to have any detent. What is happening is these two screws for the pocket clip are acting as locators for that lock bar insert. And the problem is, you've got the two screws that are up under there that actually hold the lock bar in, but they're not big enough, and they don't have a large enough area under the head of the screw to provide enough clamping force to keep this from moving laterally. So this back set of screws is acting as a locator, and between here and here it locks it from being able to move, not from clamping force, but from actually being used as a locator pin and stopping that lock bar from moving laterally. You've got, instead of basically one contact point, you've got now two contact points that are separated, so it cannot move this way. And if I go to open it, I've got detent. I've got detent. I've got detent. And you see, that is absolutely the issue that people are going to have with this knife. And I would just about guarantee, if not 100% of people that remove the pocket clip for whatever reason, whether it's to remove it to let the portion underneath patina like the rest of the knife, or if you're going to remove it because you just don't like pocket clips and you're going to carry this in your pocket, or if you're going to remove it to move it to the other side for left-hand carry, you are going to have that problem. This knife absolutely needs not only the mounting screws, but it also needs these two pocket clip screws as locating pins to keep this lock bar from having lateral movement. And the way that lock geometry works with the detent ball and the detent hole, they're not really centered up. The detent ball should fall fully into the detent hole, but be on the leading edge of the detent hole and not centered. And it's very, very much a precise measurement, guys. It's really, to get a good detent, that's the way it's got to be set up. And if we're talking about just the way the ball sits in the hole makes a difference, then just imagine how much of a difference it is if that lock bar shifts and the detent ball is not falling into the detent hole at all. And that is the issue here. Now, we didn't spend a lot of time looking at the inside of the knife. I'm going to let the video speak for that. It was very cleanly done, very well done. I've got no issues with that. The two washers, the stainless washers that the bearings roll on, I wish they were just a little bit thicker, but they seem to be doing their job as long as you don't over tighten the pivot and mark or indent those washers with the bearings. But this issue back here that's going to be a major thing. And what I'm going to do is, as soon as the Thanksgiving holiday is over, Monday, I am going to call Kershaw and I'm going to give them a link for this video so they can see exactly what I'm talking about. They are going to have to go back to the drawing board with this knife. And the fix is simple. There's two ways you could fix it. One, you could leave it as it is and provide a second set of pocket clip screws, which would leave then 4 screws on the tail end of this knife on the lock side, which I don't think would be very aesthetically pleasing. The second is you're going to have to mill in, change the milling pattern on the inside of this lock side scale to leave a locating pin somewhere at the tail end of that lock bar insert. If you leave a locating pin down at the tail end, then it will locate it, and then you'll have the 2 mounting screws. Then you will have your 2 points of location, and it will keep that from moving laterally like this. That is what they're really going to have to do, and that would just be a change in the machining programming for that scale. And it's all set up CNC anyway, so it should not be a big issue to fix. In fact, they could very well be already aware of it and be moving on it now. And there you go, guys. There is the guts and glory on the Kershaw Natrix Mini in copper. You know what, guys? For all of the, let's say, shortcomings of this knife, I'm still very appreciative of getting this knife from Kershaw. You know, it's a little small and it's a little coarse, but it's copper in a production knife in a great little design, and nobody else is offering that. So I'm very appreciative as far as that goes. Now, beyond this, I'm going to carry this just a little bit more, and then I'm going to do an in-depth review, and that will be it as far as touching bases with the copper Natrix, unless Kershaw wants to send me a new example once they do that improvement, and then I can do a follow-up video as far as showing that this issue is fixed. All right. I appreciate you guys watching as always. You guys are the reasons that I do these videos. It's fun for me to do them, but without you out there, I'd just be talking to myself, and that would be crazy. So as always, thank you for watching. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.